Hey, it's us again at Probably Unlimited Games, back with week 7 of Hunting in the Queen's Forest. Remember how we've been complaining about the animations for the past 2 weeks? Well, we've finally got some good news about that. Also, Matthew has put me to work on something more substantial than just complaining about my inability to help with the actual programming. Steve and not Steve still don't have any animations, though. They are above such things. Anyway, Matt did it. He actually did it. After 2 weeks of wrestling with animation systems and blend trees and wanting to throw his computer out the window, he got everything working again. The player can jump, crouch, and use the bow. All of it. The entire core movement system is back online. Now, does it at all look good? Absolutely not. The transitions are janky, the timing is off, and sometimes this character does some really weird things. But it works. All of the functionality is there. So, we can't overstate how relieving this is after watching him spend 2 weeks feeling like he's just making everything worse. There's something deeply satisfying about watching someone rebuild a system from the ground up and having it actually function, and not having to do any of the hard work, even if it's held together with digital duct tape and prayers. So yeah, the animation system is finally working again. Turns out the solution was to just completely ignore the original system's approach and build his own animation blueprint. Ultimately, we just weren't able to tease apart that asset's animation system, and it seemed better to build our own rudimentary one. This is one of those things where the original coder probably did it better, but it's all Greek to us, so it doesn't really matter. So, while Matt was fighting with animations, I was doing something much more intellectually stimulating, going through our existing assets and seeing which digital Lego blocks I'd like to play with. Initially, we were thinking of stereotypical log cabins with thatched roofs, you know, the Monty Python approach to medieval architecture. Low ceilings, dark interiors, exactly what you would picture when someone says medieval Europe, or even The Witcher 3. It's familiar, it fits player expectations, and it's easy to implement. We do have a couple of assets like that, but one of our mutual friends suggested something different. Wattle and Daub. I hadn't actually heard of Wattle and Daub before, even though I'd seen the houses. They always looked too nice to be from the medieval period, but it turns out that it's actually been used for over 6,000 years, predating the founding of Rome. For those who don't know, and I didn't until recently, so I don't blame you, wattle and daub is a building technique where you weave wooden strips together and then plaster them with mud, clay, and straw. So, this is kind of what I had originally in my head, just as far as the original concepts of Death of a Hunter goes. This is, typical medieval log cabins with the very steep angled roofs to keep snow off and keep your house from collapsing in on you. I don't know that we're going to go with this asset for a couple of reasons. One, like I mentioned, I think we're moving away from the pure kind of tiny houses, mud and misery, Hollywood style, and going more towards something that was, a little more, maybe more pleasant to live in, because like I said, people didn't just suddenly start living in and wanting nice things. People have always tried to do the best for themselves, no matter what circumstances that they were in. But going back to the asset here, we have just a lot more geometry in this level. This level was actually pretty light to load compared to the other level, but even so, you can see just the amount of complex geometry here. And I don't know exactly what that kind of geometry is going to do to our load times. I just kind of know from a very abstract perspective that more geometry equals more load times, more weight on the system computer, more GPU intensive, all of that. And like I said, we were trying to go for something that is a little bit more user-friendly, system-friendly, more broadly usable on a wider array of systems. So you can see, I've got the wireframe superimposed over the model right now, and you can see what we're looking at. Now, I don't pretend to know a whole lot about modeling. Like Matthew, I'm kind of a beginner modeler. My domain is much more in the story area, but we only have a team of 2 people, so what you see is what you get. But you can look and see, you can see this panel here. It has minimal geometry, which means pretty lightweight, pretty fast load times. But you can see this stonework here has lots of detail. lots of little triangles, and that, as far as I know, contributes to load time. So you can see kind of all of these little different triangles. Each of these little different triangles just contributes to load time. So that's one of the things that we're kind of trying to avoid with Death of a Hunter. We want to make something that's lightweight, that can run on most systems, and still looks pretty good. And I'm going to turn the wireframe off for just a second here so you can see how good this particular asset set looks. So we're just going to go to Lit. And this actually looks really, really good. Like, there's a lot of stylization that's going on here that's really, really good. But this is definitely on our short list of things that we think we want to use as far as assets. And maybe we're going to do some kit bashing as far as that goes. Bring in some assets from one asset set that matches with another asset set. Like I said, I was thinking we're going to go with the thatched roofs. Like in this one, it doesn't actually look too bad. These look like slate tiles rather than like clay tiles, which I think I'm doing a lot of research on this as we speak, but it seems like slate tiles would be kind of less labor intensive because it's a harvested material rather than a crafted material, but again, I don't know that. But we'll probably go with a variety of roofs. So slate tiles, thatched roofs, just to see what we can do artistically as far as creating a cohesive and coherent town. This is one of the assets that I know has nanite enabled, so we're going to do a little bit of explanation according to a absolute beginner on what nanite is. So we're going to switch over to the lit wireframe, and you can see all of this geometry. So we have nice sharp geometry, nice good topology. I barely know what any of that means other than that your shapes are really well defined and you're using the absolute minimum number of shapes that you should to make a individual object renderable by the GPU. You can actually see these barrels, so like this is just really good topology, according to me, a beginner. But we're going to focus on these flagstones here for just a bit. So this is what nanite does. As we move back, I'm going to slow us down just a little bit here. As we move back, we're going to see a lot of this geometry popping into bigger shapes. This is something that Unreal does to reduce the amount of weight that the GPU draws to render items that are in the distance, which you really can't see anyway. Just like in real life, you have a harder time seeing things that are further away, less detail, and as you move away, it will reduce the amount of shapes that it has to render kind of in a dynamic way, so that it reduces all of the snapping and popping that you get with normal level of detail things. And you can see it actually really well on this house. So we're going to speed up a little here. So yep, you can see all those triangles popping in when it needs to render that detail. And then when it moves further away, it doesn't need to render that detail anymore. So it just simplifies them into a larger shape. I know a lot of people don't like nanite. I know a lot of people really do. It's one of those systems that we are kind of excited to explore and form an opinion for ourselves. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to use this particular asset set, or probably minimally. Like, it is really good. It is really well done on almost every level that I can think of. Unfortunately, let me get a little bit closer. It's all brick. So I learned this recently. Brick is actually more of a Victorian era type thing. As societies progressed, as they got richer, they started to use more brick construction, where wattle and daub is ultimately easier to make, simpler. Like I said, interwoven wood slats pasted over with mud and other sorts of materials that form a hard shell around the house. But brick was much more intensive to make because you need all sorts of infrastructure for that. So unfortunately, despite how good this asset is, it is just not in the right time period for us, which is really regrettable because it has that kind of awesome Dark Souls type scale. But we're not having a Dark Souls type game, so it doesn't really matter. So this is a different asset set. I don't recall the name of it, but you can see like we have the texture streaming pool over budget, which is not a good thing. But you can see some FPS drops. You can see a little bit of chugging. I know OBS is not exactly system friendly, but there's just a bit of lag that I don't like as far as this goes. And maybe that's just part of working with it in Unreal Engine, and it's going to look better as a game system. I don't know. Like I said, this is all Greek to me, but there is a lot of complex geometry. It's all very well done. Like, I do want to say that. It's all very, very well done. Especially these windows. These windows are fantastic. I'm going to move over to lit. Oh, guess that window is not facing the sun. But look at all of the beautiful detail on these windows. This creator really did a good job. Pretty reasonable price too, actually. You can see the birds flying backwards. But yeah, just some of these assets are really, really fantastic. I don't understand what it is about all of these exposed beams, though. Like, a lot of these asset packs that we've seen use these exposed beams, and I'm not sure that I like them. I may end up having to model my own thatched roofs in Blender, which sounds like a interesting beginner project, but yeah. We're betting that something genuinely historical will feel more interesting and immersive than something that just meets expectations. Or this is going to be something that's going to ruin our game, and I'll be entirely responsible. Anyway, turns out that research-heavy work actually suits the story guy role better than I expected. While Matt rebuilds complex systems that require actual technical knowledge, I can use my soft skills to dig into the historical and aesthetic questions that will shape how the world feels. It's a better division of labor than me just writing scripts and making jokes about his code. Steve and not Steve are still T-posing because they refuse any animation upgrades whatsoever. But now they're T-posing in a world that's starting to have coherent visual identity. Progress. Anyway, like and subscribe. We're glad to have your support.